Welcome to Bipolar She. I'm your host, Janine Noel. Bipolar She is a storytelling podcast about living with mental illness. The content of the show may include stories of suicidal ideation and suicide. At the show's website, bipolarshe.com, I've listed ways to find support. If you ever need immediate help, please dial 988, a suicide and crisis lifeline. I believe in the healing power of writing and speaking about our darkest of days in raw detail. So let's go. Today I'm speaking to my friend Ava. Ava is a busy physician, writer, and for today's purposes, a sister to Sarah. When Sarah received a diagnosis of bipolar disorder in her mid-40s, Ava was compelled to get her sister the very best care. In this episode, we discuss mental illness through the lens of a family member caring for a loved one, and how along the way, two sisters discovered an older treatment for mental illness, ECT, and how they looked past its stigma and embraced a procedure that has changed Sarah's life. Hi, Ava. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
So I thought we would start by going back in time and having you tell me a little bit about you and your sister.
Sure. So my younger sister, Sarah, she's about 4.5 years younger. I think it would be good to say that we are East Indian. My parents were born and raised in India. They had an arranged marriage. We came to the U.S. when I was little, and my sister was born here. It was just the four of us in our family, and I have memories of my sister from childhood of seeming like a very normal, happy kid. She was very bright. She always performed really well at school. She had friends. We played together. We had very similar interests at that time. We played Barbies. We'd play board games. She seemed all good. There was no evidence of anything at all. I lived at home through college. Our father was a professor at a university, and we lived in that town. So I lived at home for college. She lived at home for college. And I didn't leave until I went to medical school. The year that I was a senior medical student, she was a freshman, and we stayed in the same dorm. So that was the last time that we lived under the same roof. She had skipped a few years of high school. She seemed totally normal, like a typical medical student working hard. We didn't spend a lot of time together that year. I was away doing a lot of rotations, but she seemed fine. I did not see any evidence of any mental illness in her until her mid-40s. There was a time, though, and I don't recall exactly when this was. It was after her residency, I think, when she told me on the phone that she thought there was something wrong with her, and she sounded a little down. And she was going through all this testing. And the one thing that stands out from that time that seemed so strange was that she wanted to get a bone marrow biopsy, which is a pretty invasive test. They are biopsying your bone marrow. And I remember being really concerned about her, but I was very busy with my own life. And time passed, and whatever she was going through seemed to pass. And that was the only time that I can recall until she was 46 when I wondered what was going on with her.
Did you see that moment as an obsession?
In retrospect, yes, I could see that she was obsessed with her health. She was obsessed that there was something wrong. And I don't know what was wrong, if it was purely something psychiatric, if she actually had some sort of pathology that was causing whatever symptoms she was experiencing. I don't know, but the bone marrow biopsy always sticks in my head. And the thought that, wow, that's really strange. Why would you go through that? I don't even know if she had it. That was probably in her late 20s or early 30s. She got married. She had a couple of kids. She seemed to be doing fine. And then when she was 46, my parents had moved in with her and her husband earlier that year. And I remember in October of 2018, my mom telling me kind of laughingly on the phone that my sister was up at all hours. She'd be up at 3 a.m. doing things. And then she'd sleep a couple of hours and she'd get up early and she was ready to go. She was full of energy. She was very busy, upbeat, doing great at work. And also, I remember my mom telling me that my sister had decided to redo all the floors in her house. And the floors in her house were beautiful. She's in this beautiful home. And it struck me as odd that she would spend money on that, but it's not my business. If it's her house, she wants to do it, that's fine. In retrospect, I see things differently. In December of 2018, and I should say that I have kept journals for a lot of my adult life. And when I'm going through something difficult, it's almost like therapy to process what I'm experiencing by finding the words for it to put in a journal. It was December 22nd of 2018. My sister calls. My family and I are on winter break. We're away on vacation. And she tells me a few things that were quite surprising. The first thing was that she had been feeling kind of manic for about 3 months, that she had seen a psychiatrist, that she had been diagnosed with hypomania, but that she was doing fine. She felt really good. She felt on top of the world. She felt euphoric. As best she could see, there was no downside to it other than not getting enough sleep. And the next thing she told me was that she and her husband were breaking up, that he had moved out, which was also a shock. A week later, we talked again on the phone. I was driving to a meditation retreat that was about an hour and a half away. And with that conversation, what really struck me was that her speech sounded very pressured. She was a bit aggressive in her tone, defiant, and she was very convinced that the marriage, she wanted no part of it, that she was moving on, that she felt her life was now expanding in new ways, that he had been holding her back, that life was great. She had no regrets. She didn't need him. And it felt to me like someone who just was not processing her feelings at all, kind of buried her head in the sand to some extent. But at the same time, she didn't sound like she was crumbling. She seemed off, but yet she was under the care of a psychiatrist. So I thought, all right, she's getting care. Just leave her be. She wasn't asking my opinion. She was more just telling me what she was experiencing. The next entry I have in my journal is from March 24th, and I wrote that I had not had a real conversation with her since the end of December when she had that pressured speech and that conversation. But she seemed okay. The next time I write anything in my journal is April 6th of 2019, and now she's different. Now she's telling me on the phone that the hypomania has calmed and that her psychiatrist thinks that she has situational depression, that it's finally hitting her, that her marriage is over. She's feeling lonely and sad about that ending. She's concerned about her kids. She is concerned about the house, that she needs to now move out of it. Her job is very demanding. She's not sure that she can keep up. And she sounded, for the very first time in her life, depressed. Her psychiatrist had started her on Lamictal, hoping that that would help. And she just was hanging on to hope that she was going to start to feel a little bit better. I talked to her a week later, and now she sounds worse. She's convinced that she's going to lose her job, like very convinced, terrified. And she is sinking further into depression. The psychiatrist is working with her, but I felt that I needed to go down and see her and support her and see my parents. And when I pulled up to her house, the person who came outside to greet me did not look like my sister. She looked like she had lost, in the 2 months since I had seen her, a tremendous amount of weight. She was down to a size 0. Her skin was dull. The light in her eyes was gone. Her hair was scraggly. Gray roots were showing. And she was somebody who was very well put together. She took a lot of pride in her appearance. And she's normally this beautiful, luminous person. And this was a completely different person I was seeing. Her nails, she always would go get manicures with gel nails, and the gel nails had grown out. The color was chipped. The edges were raggedy. She looked terrible. She wanted to talk to me, so we went in her backyard of this beautiful home. And it felt for the first time in her entire life, she was completely honest with me in ways that she hadn't been before. Maybe this is purely my perception, but up until that time, it always felt like she was only sharing a part of her life with me. There was something she was always holding back. And now she felt like she was laying it all on the table, and she was sharing very difficult, private things about her life with me. And I felt very sad and scared and not sure how this was going to end. I think one way that she had managed all of the symptoms she was experiencing, or maybe this is just a symptom of the hypomania, was that she was a bit of a compulsive shopper. And she had purchased just so many things. And she had this big, beautiful house, and rooms were full of all these items she had purchased, clothes that still had tags on them, gifts she had bought to give to people that she had never given, all sorts of things. So we had spent that Sunday going through one of her rooms, trying to make piles and take them to Goodwill and consignment. It just felt like the weight of her life felt so heavy on her shoulders. There was so much to do. So I go home hoping that the medication starts to work. She's, like I said, seeing a psychiatrist. She's seeing a therapist. She thankfully does not lose her job. And early May comes, and now she has a rash from the Lamictal. So her psychiatrist wants to taper her off, and he starts her on Effexor, and he goes on vacation for 2 weeks, as we're all allowed to do. Unfortunately, my sister was melting down at this point. My sister had a colleague in the area who she had worked with during her residency, who was a psychiatrist, who she contacted, and he was willing to see her. And he suggests that perhaps she try ketamine. She was not at that time, to my knowledge, suicidal, but she did tell me that she didn't want to live. She didn't want to be in this situation. But at the same time, she loved her kids. She wanted to be there for her kids. She just didn't want to feel as horrible as she was feeling. I remember being in Target in the evening, and my sister calls me. This is before the ketamine. And she sounded so despondent and so hopeless. And she's asking if she can move up and live with my husband and I and my family, and just really circling the drain. I felt horrible for her, but told her, try the ketamine. This might help you. Several hours later, she calls me, and she said it was the worst experience of her life. It was the worst 45 minutes of her entire life. She felt like she was going to die during the ketamine, which is, I'm sure you know, an anesthetic that has been shown in patients with especially suicidal ideations to potentially get them over the hump. During the 45 minutes or hour long that she felt the ketamine, she kept looking at her hands while she was in the treatment room. And the physician who was treating her kept asking, why are you looking at your hands? And she said she could see her hands age in front of her eyes from the way they looked to that of a very old woman. And she said it was terrifying. She felt even more hopeless now. Thursday, the 16th of May, I'm in the office seeing patients. Her psychiatrist calls me. They pull me out of a room, and he tells me that if he was on the fence on Tuesday about her needing inpatient stay, today he was positive. I asked, are there any places in the area where you can refer her? And there was really no place in her metropolitan area that he felt would provide her with adequate enough care that would be likely to be effective. He suggested a few private places, one of which was Sierra Tucson. So when I spoke with Sierra, they said that they did have space for her, but it would depend on whether or not she met criteria, which made them feel that they could help her. So I fly in on Friday morning. Again, she looks just as bad as she did the month before, if not worse. Now she's covered in this Hy-Vee kind of reaction everywhere from this rash that she has, which we assume it could have been from a medication. It could have been psychogenic because she was so incredibly anxious. And She speaks to the person at Sierra Tucson. I can still see her on the phone, and she's just scratching herself raw from this rash that she can't control. Her leg is bobbing up and down. She just looked like a mess. I just felt like my heart breaking for this poor person. So Sierra does the intake interview. They call us back that afternoon and say, yes, that they'll take her. And can I bring her tomorrow? So I make the flight reservations. And the following morning, which was Saturday, May 18th, we get on a plane and eventually get to Tucson. And in the car, she just progressively decompensates. She is periodically panicky. She's hyperventilating. She looked almost like someone withdrawing from something. She looked like she was just coming out of her skin. It was horrible. And I remember holding her hand and looking out the window as we're driving, looking at this desolate desert landscape, the cacti and the strip malls, and just feeling this overwhelming sense of hopelessness. And looking at her, and she looked like a mess. And I remember worrying, what if we get there and they say they can't help her? Then what do I do? Like, they are my last hope. So we pull into the facility, and the driver opens the gates, and there is a sign there on the left side of the driveway in huge letters. It says, "Expect a miracle." And I choked back tears because that's exactly what it would take. And so much depended on this. Nothing else was going to happen until she got better. And I was just so struck by that line, "Expect a miracle." We go into the lobby, this little lobby, and we're just the only people in there, and we're waiting for someone to come assess her. And again, she looks terrible. She's got this wild look in her eyes. She looks terrified. And my sister asked if there was anybody who could give her something for the itching. She's just so incredibly itchy. So a nurse comes. She listens very compassionately, but she says there's nothing she can do until a doctor has seen her. So we're sitting there waiting. And my plan was to fly back the following day, just to get her there. They're going to keep her for a month, and I'm going to leave. And the shuttle driver comes back in and he says, "Ma'am, if you want to go to the airport, I'm leaving now." And I'm looking at her at this Greek tragedy of her life. She is this brilliant, beautiful, luminous person who is so intelligent. She's the life of the party. She is extroverted where I'm introverted. She's warm and loving and a hugger. And everyone who meets her is so drawn to her. She's charismatic, magnetic. And I'm seeing this version of her, which is so far from that it's staggering. But in that moment, there was something inside of me that I felt like I needed to protect myself too. And so when the shuttle driver said, "If you want to go to the airport, I can take you now, but I can't take you later," and I thought, I have to go. So I got home, and over the week, I think she called me. I don't know that she called me every day, but she called me often in the evenings. She didn't sound better. And then about 10 days into it, and they had started her on several medications right away. And about 10 days into it, she said she felt about 10% better. And as the month went on, she got a little bit better. So by the time the 30 days were up, she was well enough that she could fly back by herself. And over the course of the rest of 2019, she did okay. She got back to her life. Her house got sold. She started renting a condo. And when 2020 rolled around, she was still doing okay. In February of 2021, and I can always hear it in her voice. February 1st, I called to talk to her, and she sounded depressed again. I could just hear the happiness completely evaporated from her voice, and she was down again. Thankfully, through some mutual friends, I was able to get the name of somebody who she's still seeing, who's an excellent psychiatrist. She gets a little bit better, but for the rest of 2021, she's kind of floundering. Like she's able to work. She's afraid to stay alone. So she's couch surfing. She's with one friend for a few weeks or a month. Then she's staying with a different friend. She's afraid to be alone. She doesn't want to be by herself in her condo. So by 2022, it's decided that she wants to try transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS, to see if that will help. She starts it on Valentine's Day of 2022. I believe it's supposed to be daily treatments, Monday through Friday for 6 weeks. She goes for a few of the treatments and she decides she can't do it because the TMS doctor said she cannot be taking any kind of anxiety meds, no anxiolytics. And without those, she found it just really hard to function. And so one of her very dear friends with whom she had stayed on and off called me. Her psychiatrist is calling me, and we had decided that she should consider ECT. I should give a little history with ECT in my family. Our father has had clinical depression the majority of his adult life, and he had had ECT about 20 plus years ago, which saved his life. He had tried many different meds and had failed, and it was life-saving and life-changing for him. And my sister knew that. The hesitation for trying it, because she obviously was also resistant to multiple medications, the resistance for her was that, unlike TMS, which you can take yourself to, ECT takes place over the course of a month. It's typically 2 to 3 times a week, and you need a driver to take you to the facility where it's administered. You're there for an hour or two, then somebody needs to drive you home. It's a lot of time off work. It's a month, basically, that you need to set aside to have this treatment done with support. And it was not something that would be easy for her to manage where she lived.
Right. So there's stigma attached to ECT.
Yes, there is.
And how would you describe the actual treatment?
Sure. So there's the version that people think of from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with that scene. It's quite different from that, thankfully. So the process, the time that it does require general anesthesia. The patient is under anesthesia, I believe, for 5 to 10 minutes. It's a very quick procedure. And essentially what is done is that an electrode is placed on the patient's head and a seizure is triggered. And somehow through the triggering of that seizure, which lasts about a minute, something happens chemically in the brain that helps reverse the depression. And her psychiatrist felt like it was time, and we decided that we would have her come where we are, live with us for a month. She was able to get the time off of work and undergo the 12 treatments at a place where my father had had his treatments. So she came up the weekend before she started. When she got off the plane, my mom had flown down to bring her back up. She didn't look as bad as she did when I took her to Sierra, but she was still withdrawn. She looked like a depressed person. She flew in on a Saturday. Sunday morning, the day before the treatment, she can't get out of bed. She doesn't want to see anyone. She's down, understandably. The next morning, I take her to the hospital where the treatment is done. The staff is amazing. They come and get her. She's in the facility for about an hour and a half, 2 hours. They call me when she's done. They wheel her out. And she was okay. She had a little bit of a right-sided headache. Her muscles felt a little achy, but she was good. And we went home. And over the course of 2 weeks later was her birthday. And by the time her birthday rolled around, after she had their 7th treatment on her birthday, she was already transformed. She was chatty. She was hopeful. She could look to the future with hope. She was definitely coming out of it. It was really miraculous to see, because there is nothing that I have ever seen in terms of psychiatric meds that works so quickly. Like, it is significant, the change. So by the time the month was over, She was completely back to her normal self. She could not get out of there fast enough and back to her life. One of the potential side effects from ECT is memory loss, which she wasn't all that concerned about. But thankfully for her, it was really minor. There were a few times where during the course of that month, maybe we had gone shopping. She wanted to buy a gift for one of her kids. And the next day or a few days later, she had no memory at all of that experience. But her memory issues from the ECT were really quite minimal. So she was able to return to her life happy, back to almost her, or I would say back to her normal self. She worked with her psychiatrist there, and everyone felt that, when I say everyone, the psychiatric community, between the doctors she had seen up here and her psychiatrist, felt it would be good for her to get maintenance treatments. So she was plugged in with a hospital where she lived, and she went, I think, a month later for a treatment, and then maybe a few months later, and eventually it was decided that she didn't really need any more maintenance treatments, that if she felt that she was starting to slip under again, that she could get more treatments. But for her, it has been life-changing. So that was 2 years ago, and she's done really well since. It's remarkable. So she is a very huge proponent of ECT. And in the data, from what I've read online and in journals, it's about 80% effective for patients with depression. It's used a lot in bipolar disorder and schizophrenia. So she is a huge proponent of ECT and what it can do for people. And I would agree with her that it's very underutilized because, as you said, of the stigma that's attached to it. It's very safe. It's, for at least in the experience of the two people who I know who've had it, it was very well tolerated. There were memory issues, but in the grand scheme of things, that is a very small price to pay to get your life back. So for my sister, it has been transformative.
That's really incredible.
It is incredible. And she certainly wants to spread the word to more and more people that it should not be the last-ditch effort, that it should be something that's considered sooner if medications aren't working. Because I believe that she may be on lithium now, but she's on way fewer medications than she was ever on. And she's able to function and have a great quality of life and have meaningful relationships and function well at work. And so she's in a really, really good place, which is amazing to see after seeing the other side of things.
Wow, that is quite a journey.
Yes.
For both you and for her.
Yes.
I mean, it's really fortunate. You are a family of physicians. So I think that is also, a component of the story, that you knew kind of where to get the top of the line care for her
Right.
at Sarah Tucson, which is a 30-day stay.
Right.
Which is amazing in terms of psychiatric care. Most people end up in hospitals,
Right.
shorter stays.
Correct.
So there was a lot of knowledge within your family.
Right.
To really, push for the best care out there.
Right.
And to also, be open to ECT and to have had your dad go through that before, and to know maybe, well, his genes responded to it. Perhaps hers will.
Right. And hers responded, I would say, even better than my father's did. Her transformation was more significant. Although he got his life back, and it's been almost 22 years since he went through it. But to your point, yes, it worked for both the people in my family without any serious harm or negative lingering side effects. It's been amazing, life-changing.
Great. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story. I think it will help a lot of people.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And to your sister.
Yes, to my remarkable sister.
California's children are facing heartbreaking challenges with mental health issues. To address this, Being Well California is leading a campaign with the California Department of Education to create a California Mental Health Awareness License Plate. The student-designed plate will support youth mental health programs in the state. With an estimated project cost of $850,000, just 10 individuals, companies, or organizations could make this initiative a reality. And every donation plays a crucial role during this critical time. Visit beingwellca.org today to create a legacy for generations to come. Let's bring mental health into the light, even if just a traffic light.